So, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well and having a good week.
Yeah.
Um, Today's our last class, which is crazy already. And I set you all somewhat of an ambitious assignment in terms of, just as a reminder, I set you two shooting assignments, either or both. One was around the house and the other was reflections. And then I set you an objective based off what we learned last time, which was to see if you could create a black and white on your iPhone, on your iPad, on your computer. Interested, especially when it comes to the black and white component of that. Did anyone find any difficulties in being able to turn their pictures black and white?
Yeah. No.
Good. Good, good. I know a couple of you, I don't think anyone here, right now, but a couple of you had emailed me saying you'd having some difficulties and I'd emailed you some instruction. So hopefully everyone got that. Um, did everyone feel like they found interesting things around the house that they wouldn't have otherwise not seen? Did it get you thinking a little bit out the box?
Kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Good, good, good. So we got quite a lot of everyone submitted a few images today. We're going to look at those. We're going to try and kind of tie up everything that we've covered so far, and push you all forward. And Yvonne, you've just come in again as without your camera, so I'll just let you play with that, so as to not hold up the rest of the group. Okay, so I am going to share my screen, and we will go from there. Okay, so. Let me know, everyone, that you can see this without any issues. You should be able to see these
Yes, I
tents.
do. Thank you.
Can I just have a thumbs up from everyone just so I can see that you can see them? Perfect. Great.
Do you see me?
Oh, well done, everyone. You got your camera turned on. Nice job.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, good. So everyone's here. Perfect. Good. So let's just, can you guys just give me a thumbs up? Just let me know that you can see my drawings on the screen. Great. Okay. So as a reminder, a big reason why I set this challenge of black and white is because I briefly mentioned how sometimes color in a photograph can be distracting. It can actually be a negative. It can take us away from the focal point, especially if it's too like crazy and in your face. And when we strip a photograph away from the color component of it, when we take the color away, it's really left on the strength of two things: lighting and composition. And if either of those are somewhat weak, then usually you won't end up with a good candidate for a black and white image. Now, this is the opposite. This has really good composition and really good lighting, which meant that instantly this was a great candidate to think, oh, maybe I want to turn this one black and white. By good composition, we've got our tent over here on the left-hand side. So we've got rule of thirds going on. We've got a repetitive pattern, which is really important. Repetitive pattern we love in photography. It helps us draw the eye down into the frame and help create the line. And then we have this big, booming, interesting, cloudy sky with all the different shades of gray in between. Even the little bit of light hitting the mountain down here is lovely. And what's we're always trying to achieve with a black and white image is as larger dynamic range as we can. Meredith, I'm sorry to call on you as the first person. Can you remember what dynamic range means?
No, without looking it up. No, I can't off the top of my head. Sorry.
And if not, don't worry. We can. Judy, do you want to see if you can help her out? Can you remember what
Yes,
it
I
means?
believe if I
Oh,
remember
you're on mute, Judy.
correctly, the
Oh, there we go.
difference, the further you can get with between the black and the white,
Good. Very good. So
saturation between the two.
yeah. So the definition again of dynamic range is
Okay.
how much light our camera can see from the darks to the lights,
That's right.
from the shadows to the highlights. Generally, the more light we can see, the increased dynamic range, that equals like a photograph that has more contrast it equals a photograph that has more like, well, it has more, what's the word I'm looking for? It has more like, for want of a better word, it has more like pop, as in it like pops off the screen. It looks more three-dimensional, and and it has more depth. And this photo has that in a real, that's why I wanted to start with this photo. Whoever took this photo on an iPhone 8, which just shows you don't need an iPhone 16. This is an iPhone that's 8 years old. If you can see the light and you can see the composition well, the equipment isn't. Remember, I always say the best camera is the 2 inches behind it, i.e., you. The equipment is not everything. And this is a perfect case in point to show that the iPhone 8 here was able to produce a very rich picture where we have kind of the dark blacks here. Here's our dynamic range. We have the rich whites up here in the clouds and kind of in here as well, and in some of the tent. And then we have lots of shades of gray in between. And that's the key. What we don't want is, and sometimes a common pitfall, and you'll see this in some people's pictures, and I'm going to do a little bit of work on them to help them have more dynamic range, is we don't just want like one single kind of shade of gray, the whole thing being one shade of gray, because that makes them look, our photographs look much flatter, less three-dimensional, have less depth. So, and a trick I told you all that you can do to help get this on your iPhones or your iPads, which pretty much everyone has on this group, is when you go to the edit on your iPhone or your iPad after you've taken the picture, you're going to see an option as you scroll along at the bottom. The first one will be exposure, but as you scroll along and you flick your finger along, one's going to be blacks and one's going to be whites. And if you think about it, if this is dynamic range, so here's our black, I'll actually do it in the right colors. So let's say here's our black, okay, and here's our white. And there's all our shades of gray in between. So all our shades of gray going from black
Okay.
to, let me draw a nice diagram here for you, going from black to white. Okay. If you go to the edit on your iPhone and you go to the blacks first and you decrease the blacks, by that I mean you slide them, oh, you do a black one here, you slide them to the left. So you slide this black slider, it doesn't take much, but you just slide it a little bit to the left. By the way, this is true for some of you who are using computers to edit. It's exactly the same. This is a great trick to increase dynamic range. Then you go to the whites and you slide the whites to the right. What that basically is doing is making the blacks blacker, darker, and it's making the whites lighter, whiter. And if we come down here and then we think about our dynamic range, what you're ostensibly doing here is you are taking the blacks and you're making
Oh,
them darker. You're shifting them over here.
hey, wait
And
a
you're
second.
and you're taking the whites
Wait a minute.
and you're putting them over here, which has the subsequent effect of increasing the dynamic range. So we get a bigger dynamic range. And that's easier to get when we have good lighting because more light equals more dynamic range. But it's a great way of, after the fact, you're looking at an old photo, you're editing, you're playing with the photograph. If you want to give it that extra bit of pop, like the cherry on the top of the cake, especially on a black and white picture, then this is a great way to do it. And you can do that on any iPhone, any iPad, any computer. You're just going to, not too much though, you're going to decrease the blacks and increase the whites. I'll show you what it looks like. I often teach people this and then they overdo it. I'll recreate it here. And what they'll do is they'll get over carried away and they'll go like this. And GCA as well hate this. So they'll make it very deep dark blacks. And now that's got a lot of dynamic range in that picture, but at the same time, we don't want it. Let me just get rid of this bar on the side for you guys. We don't want it where there's like blobs of really dark black, which now you can see in the mountain on the top left. The sky's kind of okay, but it looks over contrasty here now, especially if you compare it to the one before. Let's get it in the middle of the screen for you. Um, hold on. Can you guys, is that getting cut off for you guys on the right-hand side? I'm just going to unshare my screen for 1 second just so I can fix that. So the takeaway is really you should be doing that on every black and white picture.
Can you tell us again where it is?
Yeah, of course, of course. So if you open up if you take a picture or you're looking at your pictures, so you want to be in like the playback mode, like in photos, then if you go and select the photo you want and you hit the three, I'll share my screen again so you can see this. You hit the three little sliders down at the bottom. Those are the edit sliders. I'll draw them out for you here. Hold on. Let me share my screen. So you should see, it won't say the word edit, but the sliders kind of look like, I'm going to draw them out exactly for you. They look like this. And
I see that.
Okay, once you click on those, okay, then down at the bottom, the first thing you'll probably see is what says auto underneath your picture. Okay. And from there, I want you to slide across and you're going to keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. And you're going to get to one that says black point. It depends on your iPhone. Some people it will say blacks. Some people it will say black point. And you're going to slide that black point over to the left.
Black point. Okay, black point.
You got it?
So excuse me, am
Yeah,
I on? So it says auto, but do you go beneath there where it says auto and the one that has like the magic
It's a good
wand?
question, Yvonne. You swipe across from auto. So that auto, if you press that auto button, that's just Apple trying to decide, like, I think this is the best edit to put on this picture, and it just like does 10 different things. But a lot of the time, I'd much rather that you were in control and doing it yourself. So there's tons of sliders there, like as you go across, there's vibrancy, there's exposure, there's brilliance, there's definition, there's sharpness, there's all these different things that you can do to your photograph.
Yeah.
And kind of we'll get there. But the main one I want you to find for the moment is the one that says black point.
Oh.
As you go across, you should be able to see it. Hopefully everyone can see it.
Black point.
That's it. And that's basically
contrast.
that's basically saying
black point. Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
That's good. Nice job, Yvonne. So that's basically saying, where do I want the black to sit on my dynamic range? Do I want the black to actually be lighter, which you don't want to do, which is decreasing the dynamic range, or do I want it to be deeper and darker? So that's an easy trick. Once you've turned your picture black and white, that would be the first place that I would go if you're editing on a phone.
Do you like the muted black and white as the first stop, or mine has muted black and white and then it also has stark black and white?
Good question. I would usually start with the muted, and this is not Carrie, this is not on everyone's iPhone, so if you don't have this, don't worry. I would usually start with the stark one, actually, because what the stark one is doing is trying to give you an increased dynamic range. Now, another way, everyone, to turn your photos black and white, which is why I asked at the beginning if anyone was having issues, a really easy way to do it, or at least to be able to quickly see if you want this picture black and white, is again, if you go down to those edit sliders and you just go across, and it's actually the one next to black point, saturation, and you just take it all the way down to minus 100. That's going to make your picture black and white because we're just removing all the color. And that's a really quick way to do it, a little bit more manually, but it gives you a bit more control. So kind of, if I was thinking about making a black and white on an iPhone, probably step number one I would do is I'd go to those edit sliders like that. That would be step number one. Step number two is I would then go to saturation, and I would take it down to minus 100. That will make your picture black and white because you're removing all the color, but you're removing it with more control over, like what Carrie just described was, do I just want to make a stark black and white? Do I want to make a muted black and white? I'd much rather you're making the decisions than Apple is making the decisions.
On my particular, sorry.
Go on. Is that Missy?
No, but I'm not seeing all this stuff either.
You're not seeing the sliders?
Well, let me go back. I went to the edit and mine comes up at the very bottom. It says styles, adjust, crop, and cleanup. And above that, it has different pictures.
Go to adjust.
Okay.
And then what do you see?
Okay. Then a lot of circles and then exposure highlights. Okay.
That's it. That's where you
Okay.
need.
Okay.
And may I ask that right when you're at the black point, you said the one to the left will take out all the color? Oh, I see. And then you just slide it.
Saturation.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, hold on.
You got it. So this would be, so the first thing would be edit. That's the
Okay,
sliders,
gotcha.
or for some people, as Missy just said on her iPhone, it says adjust.
Mm-hmm.
The second step would be go to saturation and take out all the saturation, drag it down to 100. You'll see your picture will go black and white on the screen.
Okay, great.
And then number 3, as a starting point, we're going to go to the black point, which is setting like how deep and dark do we want the blacks. And from there, as mentioned, on black point, which sits right next to saturation, and that's somewhat intentional, it's actually just before it, I want you to drag to the left. So I want you to make it a minus number. Not minus 100, but I can kind of give you a scale here. Usually somewhere between 0 to minus 30 is the sweet spot. But it's different on every photo. So I can't give you a hard number. But what that does is that essentially does what I'm going to recreate here on the computer. That if this was, in fact, you can see the difference here. Let me create a copy. Create a copy. Let's not overdo it too much. But look at the difference. Now, this was a pretty good black and white to begin with. But if you look on the one on the right, I think it will pop a little bit more off the page than the one on the left. The blacks are a little bit, so that's photo number 2 over here. So I would argue if I was comparing these, that number 2 looks a little bit more 3-dimensional than number 1. And that's because hopefully you can all see that through Zoom. And that's because we've increased, and I'll get rid of this down the side as well. That's because we've increased the dynamic range. And as I say, the easiest way to do that on an iPhone is just drop the black point. You can actually also do this on a color photograph. It works on a color photograph. You just see it more obviously on a black and white picture.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah. Hey.
Sorry to interrupt, but
do me a favor. Just yeah, Yvonne. Just call out your names before, because there's quite a lot.
Yvonne.
Yeah. Hey.
Yes, I'm not in class. I don't see me in the seats, but
I think that's because you rejoined afterwards.
I did.
Don't worry, you're here. Everyone can see you.
Okay. I'm so glad I'm in detention. So you also had told us before about how to change the dynamic range on your iPhone, didn't you? There was some little thing, not to be confusing, but wasn't there something we pressed while we were taking the picture, before we took the picture?
Not necessarily. You can't increase your dynamic range on an iPhone. So everyone's iPhone, depending if you've got an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 12 or an iPhone 15, generally the better the iPhone you have, or the newer the iPhone you have, the more dynamic range it sees. Just the cameras have got better and better and better. So the more light it sees. And you can't change your camera's dynamic range. It's fixed.
Okay.
You can move it around. And I think what you're referring to, Yvonne, is in a situation like this, let's just imagine the sun was going down here, is you to maximize your dynamic range and to make sure the camera is seeing as much as it possibly can. You want to take your square, remember, and you want to put it on the brightest thing in the picture and do that 1, 2, 3 hold. And if you remember, and this is good reinforcement for everyone, when you do that 1, 2, 3 hold, not only do you lock the focus, but at the top of your iPhone, you're going to see AEAF lock. AF is autofocus, but this is the one Yvonne's referring to, which means auto exposure. That basically it's like you're instructing the iPhone, give me enough dynamic range, like maximize what you can see, to mean that the sun doesn't look like a big blown out white ball, like it actually looks red or yellow or orange or whatever color it is as it's coming down. But I also get things in the foreground. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think someone else I saw had a question. Was it Nancy? You had your hand up. Yeah, Nancy, you may just want to take yourself off mute. You got it. You're still on mute, Nancy. Jean's got a question while we're waiting for Nancy.
I have a really dumb question.
There's no dumb questions.
I sent you the one that I had a green background with it and how to make it into black and white, and you told me what to do, but I didn't quite do it because I like the green and I want to use the picture with a green background in a book I'm doing. And how do I ever get it back to where it was if I make it black and white?
Great question. Very good question. So
It is?
the nice thing about the iPhone is that you can always go, well, unless you hard save it, but I shouldn't say, but most of the time you can go back. So if you go back to the edit or the adjustments gene and you go back to those sliders along the bottom, all you've got to do is find saturation and drag it back up to bring the color back into the photograph. Because essentially all that's
Will it
happened is
be exactly that same color, or will
no,
it
it'll be
be
exact. It'll bring back exactly the same. It will look exactly the
exactly?
same
Oh, okay.
as the original photograph. And often that's a good point. Sometimes when we make changes, especially when you crop a picture in an iPhone, and then you hit done, it will say, "Do you want to make this the new original, or do you want to save it as a copy?" If you and if you make it the new original, then you are overwriting the old thing. So
Oh, I see.
imagine I cropped these tents and I brought them down and I was on an iPhone and then I went like this and then I went to hit and it would give me a prompt and say, "Do you want this to be the new original?" If I hit yes, then I can't go back. I can't go and get the rest of the picture back. I usually advise people to put it save as a copy because then you always have the original. Because to Jean's point, maybe you decide you want it black and white and then you want it color. Maybe you decide you're making a book and you don't want this crop, you want the original crop. And that means you can always go back. So you got to be careful with that. But
That's good to know because I hesitated to do it and lose what I had.
yeah,
Thank you.
but
Very
generally
helpful.
any change you make with the sliders, the original always, it's kind of like, think of it like your photograph is here, and then you have a layer of tracing paper over the top. And everything you're doing with those sliders is on the layer of tracing paper. It's not really touching the bottom picture unless you hit that button that says make new original. What that does is that then replaces it, kind of takes out the old one and puts in the new one. So we're going to save it as a copy.
But you can always revert to original, right?
You
I
can
mean,
always revert, well, not on the crop. You can't on the crop, Carrie. If you crop it and you save that as the original, again depends what iPhone you have, but the majority of iPhones will not let you go back. Nancy, you
the
have,
very new, the newest one will. It'll
yes,
even let you
I
go
know,
back.
I know, but I think you are there's maybe two people here who have the iPhone 16. So,
If you do it on your computer, it will let you revert back
oh
to
yeah, if
original.
you do it on your computer, absolutely. The computer's a different story. The computer, everything on the computer is what's called non-destructive editing, which basically just means you can't screw it up. It's impossible because you can always go back, which is a big advantage of like when I use this program Lightroom and I'm showing you guys things and I'm like doing this and I could go whatever I want to do and mess around with the sliders. Nothing's actually permanent. Like if I don't like it, the original is just there sitting underneath. It's what's called it's called non-destructive editing. Um, and I'd like to get this group to maybe looking at more photos on their computer rather than editing on your iPads or your iPhones, because it's so much easier because you've got a bigger screen. But also, most importantly, is when you edit on a computer, it is always this thing called non-destructive editing. And what non-destructive editing means is every gesture you make, every slider you do, every crop that you do, you never have to hit save. You never have to say, I've got from X to Y and now I want to save it. Everything is saved. So you can always go back. So you basically, if ever you want to go back to I mean, I could make this picture go, I don't know, like this. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like that. I want to go back to how it was originally right at the beginning.
Is that just in Lightroom or in Photoshop and all that stuff too?
It's actually interesting because so there's three main programs that people tend to use to edit photos on a computer. Lightroom and Photoshop are made by the same people. They're made by Adobe, a company called Adobe, Adobe. And then there's Apple Photos, which again a lot of you use because your iPhone pictures come straight into your photos. One of the downsides of Apple Photos editing can sometimes be destructive. So it actually means A, you can't go back, and B, what we don't want to do when we edit digital pictures is if we edit the original, every time we're doing an edit, you can kind of think about it like we've got like a little bit of sandpaper and we're slightly sanding away on our actual photograph. So actually what happens is the more editing you do, you actually lose quality. You can over edit and you can start to bring in things like digital noise and less sharpness into your photographs. A big reason why people move from Apple Photos to Lightroom specifically, because Photoshop is also destructive editing. You have to hit save, otherwise it doesn't save it. Is that Lightroom is totally non-destructive. It's probably one of its biggest selling points. So like if I come up here and I'll just slide a whole load of sliders just so you can see stuff happening. If you look on the left-hand side here where my red arrow is, okay, here, you'll see it says history. Hopefully we're not blocking it. And this is basically that you can think of it like an audit trail. It's an audit trail of every single thing I've done to this picture. So it's telling me I slid the blacks, I changed the shadows, I did the highlights, I changed the temperature. And at any point, I can go back to any of those states, which is really useful. And I never have to hit save. So even if my computer halfway through this meeting blew up, I wouldn't lose any of the work that I've done to any of your photographs. It's kind of a good analogy to use is when it comes to documents, people writing documents, like if you use Microsoft Word, which probably a lot of you use, if you're using Microsoft Word, unless you turn on a feature called auto save, you have to save what you're typing. If you don't save what you're typing and then your computer crashes, you lose it and you have to retype it again. The auto save feature on Word, which just means in real time, every time you type one letter, it's saving, is again a type of what we call non-destructive edit. It's just with text rather than with imagery. So lots of good questions there. I would like to get this group. I know we're going to see if we can continue on some lessons. It's not for today, but I'll come to you in a sec, Nancy. Hold on. But for the time being, I'm focusing a lot of time and attention in these classes in how to do the edits on your phones and on your iPads, because I know that's what a lot of you are doing. Also, that's quite good because sometimes you're in a car, you're on a train, you're on an airplane, and you want to play with your photographs. It's nice because you can do it straight from your phone, and an hour of the journey goes very quickly when you're playing and editing with some photos. Nancy, you had a question.
And
Oh, Anne has a question, and Nancy has a question.
I'm sorry to go to revert, but I would like you to re-explain the square. I've been sitting here sort of taking little pictures of the still life in front of me, and I see that when I tap on a certain portion of the grid, the square comes up and there's a little sun and a square. What I don't know is what happens after that, and how it controls focus.
Okay, really good question and good to reinforce it for everyone. So imagine, Anne, we were looking at this scene with your iPhone, the one that we can see on the computer in front of us. Whoever took this picture made the decision that they wanted the tent on the left to be the sharpest thing in the photograph. That could be a tent, that could be an orange sitting on your kitchen counter, it doesn't matter. When you just tap, 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 just like a single quick tap on your screen, you're going to see the yellow square move around. So you're going to see it. If I tap there, it would be there. If I tapped here, it would be here. If I tapped in the sky, it would be here. What that is doing is that's just tentatively telling the iPhone, this is where I want the sharpest part of the photograph to be. This is where I want you to concentrate focus. The problem is a lot of the time in the real world, whether I just saw Cookie's dog come up and down on the screen, which reminded me, if you have pets, if you have kids, if you have grandkids, if you're even out photographing a flower and it's blowing slightly in the wind, if you touch on that flower and then the flower moves slightly in the wind, it's going to be out of focus. You're going to lose it. It's probably going to focus on the background behind it. So instead, a better way to help you focus on the iPhone is you find your point, and hopefully you guys can see me today because I've got this classroom thing on. If not, I can turn it off and everyone can see me bigger. But I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, hold. So Anne, here's my finger, here's my phone. 1, 2, three, hold. If you do that, you're going to see a yellow square suddenly go more defined. And you're going to see in the top of the screen, you're going to see AEAF lock. The advantage of that, why I want you to do that, is because that's you telling the iPhone, even if the thing that I've tapped on moves, blows in the wind, I do not want you to lose focus on it. And until you tap somewhere else on the screen, the focus will remain on that flower. Even if it's going like this in the wind, it means you will get 10 out of 10 photos sharp rather than 3 out of 10 photos.
Well, the interesting thing is you actually have to, I mean, a lot of times I think I've got things in focus just by looking at them.
Yeah.
And what you're saying clearly is that this is a deliberate action that you should take to assure focus.
Absolutely. So remember, good photography is done with intentionality. And what we don't want, even if it looks sharp to your eye, that you're essentially, if you don't do this, you're leaving the iPhone to make the decision where it thinks the focus should go. And usually what the iPhone does is it goes to the biggest, brightest, shiniest thing in your picture, which is sometimes not where you want the focus to go. Let's say we're taking a picture of some friends and everyone's wearing baseball caps. Here's a perfect example. And they've got a bright blue sky behind them. The iPhone, 9 times out of 10, I guarantee, unless you tap on those people wearing the baseball caps, will go to the blue sky behind them, and the people will be slightly blurry because they're in the shadows and the bright blue sky is in the highlights behind them. And the iPhone finds it much easier to focus on brighter things. You notice this square tick. I'll come to you in a second, Yvonne, and I know Nancy has a question as well. You notice this square really showing its strength and its value, especially when you're photographing in low light. In times where if you're in a restaurant and you're trying to focus on your friend across the table, if you're at sunset or twilight or dusk, any time where really any time where you're inside, or if it's a cloudy day rather than a sunny day, you're really going to notice, and I really want you to be very intentional, and it's a very easy trick to do, but I really want you to be very intentional and everyone in the group in where we place our focus. Because we are basically then overriding the iPhone. We're saying, I'm smarter than the iPhone, which is true. And I want you to put the focus right here. I don't want you to guess. And you notice this a lot as well with macro photography when we put our phones close to like a flower. And then you go back and look at it and the focus is on the wrong bit of the petal. And it's not on the center and it's on the petal on the outside. And that's probably because the petal on the outside was slightly brighter than the inside and the iPhone just guessed. And you want it on the center, you're going to 1, 2, 3, hold, and then you take your picture. And that guarantees you get focus. I hope that answers your question, Anne.
That's extremely basic and helpful, and I wish I'd learned it a long time ago. But thank you very
Don't
much.
worry.
I really do appreciate
Okay,
it.
let's go. We got a lot of questions there. I think, Nancy, do you still have your question? If not, we'll come to Yvonne.
It's okay.
Yeah, go on, Yvonne.
Okay, I love that. But when you go on your phone to change, I just thought that your iPhone, when you got that little yellow square, so you just do that and then do another and do another. I mean,
no, so hold on. So let me be clear to everyone. So you can just imagine I'm taking a picture of you guys. I can just tap, 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 tap. Every time I tap, the yellow square is going to move to a different place.
It moves.
It moves, which is good because maybe I'm over here and you want to focus on me over here. So you tap the yellow square over here. Maybe I'm over here. So you tap on the yellow square over here. Maybe you want to get my hand. So you tap on the yellow square there. That's like step number one. That's basic focusing with an iPhone. Where I'm trying to push you is a little bit past beginner focusing. And once we find our point, I want you to 1, 2, 3, hold. And then the square you're going to see is like going to go like a solid yellow. It kind of pops out the screen. It goes a solid yellow. You can practice it. You can point on anything in the room you're currently in. It will work. And you'll see at the top, then you have AEAF lock.
Oh.
And why we're doing that is not only are we then placing the square, but we're telling the iPhone not to move it.
And then you can add multiple focal points?
No, you can't add multiple focal points. That's impossible. So
How did you do that? I thought you had like 4, like a 3 yellow square.
Yeah, that was just me kind of drawing as an illustration. Imagine I could tap on me here, then I could move, and I could tap on me here, then I could tap on me here. I could be moving around. But the key is if you lock it on me at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter if I go like this or go like this or go like this. It's going to stay on me.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And for most things that not in this photograph because the tents weren't moving, but 90% of the things that you guys are probably photographing have some type of movement in them. Also, remember, you're always moving. You're breathing. Your hands are moving. Sometimes we're on a bridge. Sometimes we're on a boat. This is a great trick when you're on an aeroplane because a lot of the time, if you're taking a picture out of an aeroplane window, obviously the aeroplane's going at like 300, 400 miles an hour. We don't realize we're moving, but we're moving. So we need to fix the focus point. So even as we move, the iPhone's not randomly guessing behind the scenes and saying, actually, I want, instead of the mountain that I'm trying to take a picture of from the airplane, it's going to jump onto the lake or something else.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
So I know we've gone over that a few times with this group. So hopefully that really makes it very clear. But reinforcement and repetition is good. So I really almost want you doing that every time you take a picture with your iPhone. Now, I'll add one thing because Anne mentioned this, which I haven't mentioned to the group before. But when you do that one, and I'll draw it here, when you do that 1, 2, 3 hold, so you put these, and so I imagine I did it on this. On the right hand, so for some of you it's going to be on the right, and some of you it's going to be on the left. For most of you, it's going to be on the right. You're going to see a little sun appear to the right of the square. And actually what that is that's, imagine I'm saying I'm locking on focus onto this tent. But then you look at your iPhone, you're like, it looks a little bit dark, or it looks a little bit bright. This is actually a slider that you can put your finger on that sun and you can put it up or down. It's a little bit fiddly, I'm warning you. It's quite hard to get hold of. But essentially what you can do is you can say, I've locked onto my subject. Now I want to make sure that the brightness is perfect on it. Because sometimes you'll lock on it and the whole thing will go darker. And that's because of dynamic range move around. Sometimes you lock on it and the whole thing will go too bright. So this is a little cheat that the official term for it, and you have this on, for any of you who've got a more traditional camera, there's a button that does this called exposure compensation. And what that means is that you can manually, again, override the iPhone. And you can say, if I actually want this to be a little bit brighter, you just take this sun and you drag it up. And if you want it to be darker, you just take the sun and you drag it down. The minute you finish with this tent and you move somewhere else and you click on the next tent, you have to do, you will have to maybe do this again. It's only specific to where that square is at that specific moment in time. So that's a little extra trick that's very useful, especially when you're in a high contrast scenario, which usually happens when we're outside on a sunny day. And question.
And you would, the next question is too long to answer here, but we're looking at these tents. They are stable features of the landscape. This sort of tool can best be used on stable subjects, I would assume, and not on something that's moving.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on the level of movement. So if we had a car or a horse that was galloping across our frame here,
yeah,
then that's hard because we've got to get it. But a good analogy is the flower blowing in the wind. The holding and letting it fix on it, whether the flower is over here or whether the flower over here, it's going to stay in focus the whole time. So for extreme motion, like, I don't know, I'm on a speedboat and I'm photographing another speedboat next to me, then you can try it, but it's hard because the boat's moving in and out of the frame. When it comes to movement, one thing I will say that's kind of interesting is imagine my pen here is, let's say, our dog running, because a lot of us have dogs. If the dog is running this way across our frame, it's much harder to focus. Even if the dog is moving, let's say the dog's moving at 10 miles an hour and running this way. If it's moving laterally from front to back this way, it's a lot easier for the iPhone to handle. So I always say to people, if you're taking pictures of your dogs, if you're taking pictures of your pets, you're taking a picture of your kids, your grandkids, and they're running, try to get in the line of sight where they're running towards you rather than running across the frame. That makes focusing easier, but it also gives you a stronger photograph because you're looking directly into the eyes of your dog, your cat, your kid, your grandchild, whatever it may be. So it generally makes for a stronger photograph. And hopefully that makes sense to everyone. If you think if this pen was moving 5 miles an hour, it's in my frame for a long time. If it's moving 5 miles an hour and it goes across, it's in and out in a second. So it's much harder to get this way than it is to get this way. So that sometimes involves zooming with your feet.
Thank you.
Good. I'm going to try and get back to Nancy because I know Nancy did have a question, although she seems like she's disappeared. So maybe she'll come back in.
Hey, Nancy sent me a text and her internet went out. She's at the mountains.
Okay, no problem. I just see she had a question. Okay, good. So this was a really good place to start. And whoever took that is out of interest. Who did take this? Are they here today?
I did.
Judy, nice. Where was this?
This is in Montana, right at the entrance of Yellowstone Park from the north. And
yeah.
It was taken about 2 or 3 years ago. And I was really afraid. I had several pictures that I wanted to possibly use. I was really concerned about this one since it was taken so many years ago. I didn't know about the little sun and the autofocus. I was afraid that the sun in this was way too bright, and I almost didn't want to submit it to you.
But no, I don't agree at all. I think you've done a lovely. Presumably, you took this picture in color and you've changed it to black and white using some of the rules that we covered last time.
Unfortunately, I didn't do any editing to this other than to make it black and white. I just let nature take it, do the editing.
And that's actually a really good point, Judy, because this is showing that and this was before our lessons, you composed this really well. You had strong lighting. So both of those components meant that sometimes less is more with the editing. We don't have to over edit for the sake of editing. And this, because you had the strong light and because you had the strong composition, purely turning it black and white was enough to create something very impactful. This looks very Ansel Adams-esque, like the big stormy cloud.
Oh, thank you.
So it's a very, and I also like this picture, Judy, for everyone's benefit. It's a storytelling picture. So the tempting thing that a lot of people would have done is they wouldn't have included the tents and they just would have gone and stood over here and photographed the beautiful mountain and the sky. We definitely could have done that. But having these tents in the picture makes us wonder, what are these doing in the middle of nowhere? Who lives here? Like, what are they like? Good storytelling picture. And I wanted to show this one first as it was a good example for me to be able to elaborate on the pros and cons of different types of black and whites and how we get there. So really nice job, Judy. So I'm gonna purposely, to keep the lesson interesting, I'm gonna jump from reflections back to black and white to reflections to black and white rather than do all the black and whites in one go and all the reflections in one go, because it keeps it more varied for you guys. So take a look at this one. This is actually a very good example. It's a nice picture, definite reflections. I think maybe we could even lose some of the sky here. I don't think we could, and probably even some off to the right here. We could probably offset this so it becomes even more about the reflections. Again, I'm trying to avoid that horizon going through the center of my photo. You see I've got my grid line there. Because the reflections is this topic here, it's the theme, I want the bottom 2/3 of my picture to be the reflections. Now it's a case of finding the good ones. You could also, whoever took this, you could have gone this way. You could have done something really interesting this way. That's really abstract, reflections. But one thing that's kind of interesting with this one is this has a really big dynamic range. So this has a very bright sky, and it has then the reflections were the shadows. You can see that the sky, the camera couldn't get it. It was too bright. The way around that is if you would have tapped on the sky, like we just practiced, the camera would have adjusted the exposure to mean that this sky was more, and again, I can kind of try and recreate this, was that this sky would have been a little bit more blue. It would have been a little bit more like that. And so it would have been from there to there. So that would have been advantageous here. So remember, when we have a very bright part in our picture and we can clearly see it, we want to tell our iPhone that that's there. You see this a lot on sunsets. And if you click on the sun, suddenly your whole picture will go darker. But that's a good thing because usually what that's meaning is the phone is exposing or your iPad is exposing for the highlight, the bright bit of the scene. But this is a really, really nice shot, definite reflections. I just think from a compositional point, I don't know whether you need all of that sky. Um, I'd probably, if I could even go this way, there's loads of ways I could slice and dice this. But like, oops, let's make it straight.
If you turn it like vertical instead of horizontal, it looks like a little alien person.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's as I say, there's tons of ways
No,
that
I mean the whole image, like turn it.
oh, the whole, but even look at that.
Look,
Look how
see,
that
look,
looks more
turn
complete.
them around like this, and you see a little alien head and a little.
Oh, so, yeah, I feel like I see like
whatever.
an alien. I read too many kids' stories with my kids, so I'm always so you're saying if you spin it around, I'll do it for you
Spin
here.
it around like 90 degrees. Like,
So if I spin it around 90 degrees,
there you go. See the little
oh,
alien? Little
yeah.
happy alien.
It looks to me more like the Grinch. So I see the
Yes.
face there, and and
And a
I see
cat right below it.
yeah.
No, and above, but see the happy face above
But
it?
but also oh yeah, look here, this one here. There we go. But look also how interesting this picture looks just by changing the angle, changing the perspective. Now this you don't have to do this afterwards. You can do this when you're taking the picture. All you do is go from here to here. And straight away now you look at that and you think, that's still a reflections picture, but it's definitely more of a conversation starter. And someone's going to look at that. It almost looks like everything's exploding out, right, from the center, all this foliage and trees. So I've said this to you a number of times. Don't be afraid to experiment. Take portrait, take landscape. Often tilt your camera. There's no rules that everything always has to be straight. Like sometimes when we tilt our things, we create something really abstract and interesting. And straight away, if you think if I was judging this, if I was judging this image and I had two versions, so to speak, and I had this one, which I'll turn back to how it was. Okay, and I had this one. Which one is like more interesting and abstract? Clearly the one on the left. It's the same photo, it's the same scene, it's just taking it in a different way. And this is where I really want, and this is a big part of the theme of these lessons, is to try to get you to think out the box, to try to get you to not be what I would call the point and shooter, the person who just goes to, oh, it's a lovely reflection, I'm in this swamp, boom, 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 take the picture, move on. It's all about thinking about what you want to do and then experimenting. I always say, take 20 different pictures of the same thing. Digital is free, it's great. The only downside is your time. But in probably 2 minutes, you can take 20 different pictures of the same thing. And I'd much rather you do that in camera when you're there than try and do it in editing afterwards. Because ultimately, that's going to make you a better photographer. If we do it in editing afterwards, and I'll come to you in a sec, hold on. If we do it in editing afterwards, it just tends to make us a bit lazy. So the key, and also if we crop or we do things, we remember we lose pixels, so we lose quality. So we want to fill the frame as much as we could. Anne, you have a question?
No, just a quick comment. I love that the person who took the picture, I'm sorry, I don't know names, it pointed out the visual of the, when you tilt it and see it in a vertical or diagonal manner, because I have often done that with reflections, and it is simply amazing the images that one sees. It does depend on a good deal of detail and dynamic range to get all the images and all the little faces, but they're all there. And it's sort of like, was this the original inspiration, if you will, if somebody actually perceived this with the naked eye, of the totem pole?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it does look a little bit like that. It's interesting. I have interest.
The Illuminati.
Whose was this? Who mentioned about that they would first encourage us to tilt it? Are they here today? Yvonne, nice. So very
It's a
good.
really good one.
Yeah, really nice, Yvonne. So nice job. So let's experiment with tilts, with landscape, with portrait orientation. This is a perfect example. And whenever you have anything abstract, Sometimes flipping it you see this a lot if ever you're downtown somewhere or you're somewhere where there's buildings with lots of reflections and you photograph the reflections of a building. It's another really interesting way to start flipping things around, rotating them, and create. Ultimately, what we want to do, right, is we want to make our photos stand out. And I think there's no doubt that this photo stands out a lot more than even this one, which is just on a slant. We want to make them more of a conversation piece. We want to make the viewer ask questions. So nice job, Yvonne. Now we jump to around the house. This one's interesting because this one's a definite storytelling picture. Nice composition. Now notice on this one, whoever took it, and feel free to shout out your name, is that the focus, someone either put the square here or they put the square here. Because what the focus is doing is it's setting what we call the plane of focus. So everything the same distance away from the camera as the sunflower, the scissors, this little pouch here, and the sunflower are going to be sharp. Anything that falls beyond that, which you can kind of see in the patchwork here, and you can see it in I think this is a coaster here, they're not quite sharp, which is a good thing. Like that adds a level of professionality to your pictures and helps us draw our eye more in to the main focal point, which I think in this case is the sunflower. Now, if I was going to make a tiny critique here, I probably would have, when I took this picture, I would have moved the sunflower a little bit further to the left, just a little bit, so it was more in here. I feel like at the moment it's hanging out a little bit on the edge of the frame. And if you remember, when we have a strong line, we don't really want us leading it out the picture. It's kind of like when we take a picture. If you look at me and I was facing this way, you want me over here looking into the frame. You don't want me over here looking out of the frame. This feels uncomfortable because you want to follow me this way, but you also want to see everything that's behind me. So I think this is a nice job, very creative by whoever did this. Really nice storytelling picture. Whose was it?
Meredith.
Nice job, Meredith.
Thank you.
But hopefully, can you just see how maybe moving that sunflower a little bit to the left would have helped? But overall, yeah, and even I think Meredith, while you were there, I would have been very tempted to be like, okay, I've got this lovely setup. Maybe I'm going to go in. I can't kind of recreate it, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to just hone in on the sunflower. Maybe I'm going to go and like move myself and stand over here and photograph the sunflower from maybe a little bit lower and get all these interesting objects behind it in the background. So lots of different ways, as always, to take the same picture. Usually the key in that is changing your perspective, which is why you hear me again and again talking about those 4 Ps. I'm going to repeat them again. Practice, patience, perseverance, and perspective. And perspective sounds so easy when I say, well, just move. But it's probably the hardest thing for people to do, is to appreciate when they're looking at this sunflower, when they're looking at this scene, that if they move around it, so Meredith could have come above it and taken a picture straight down. She could have come to the right. She could have come to the left. She could have come slightly lower. Every one of those shifts in perspective is going to create something that looks totally different. Also, remember, when you move around something, you change how the light looks. Because maybe the light was coming from the top right in this occasion, but if you move over to the top right, the light's going to be coming from behind you. Remember that analogy or the metaphor I used of an egg? Like if you just put an egg on a table and you move around it, the egg is a really good metaphor analogy for the human face or a flower, because it's very easy to see where the light is falling on the egg as you spin around it and you move into different positions. But nice job, Meredith. Really nice setup. And I really like and appreciate the storytelling aspect of what you've done here. And let's look at this one, back to black and white. This one, very well done, whoever did this one. This one's very Irving Penny, the photographer I showed you last time, who uses those very deep dark blacks, those very bright whites. The use of the black background here really takes attention to the main focal point, which is clearly, obviously, the plant. I also like here that whoever took this, and again, feel free, I usually take people's names out just because I know some people don't like then their photos being shared with their names. But is this Judy's? Did you put up your hand?
It's Carol's. She's not here today.
Oh, Carol's. So nice job, Carol, because Carol has really she's achieved even there's a lot of symmetry going on in this photograph. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it feels symmetrical in terms of how it is composed. Um, and again, you can use the grid on your iPhone to help you do this if you want to put something in the center. Now, Lightroom, what I'm using here, has some nifty tools that helps me see exactly where the middle of this picture is. So if I wanted perfect symmetry, I'd be about there. But this is a very simple setup, but actually quite a complex photo. And again, the key that makes this so interesting is the light, is that Carol has positioned this so it has very strong light on it in terms of tonality from blacks to whites. If she would have taken this outside and just photographed it on like a gray, cloudy day, the whole thing would have looked a little bit flat. So it's fine. And I often say to people, like, you quickly learn around each one of your individual homes, like where the good light is and where it is at different times of day. Usually the good light is by a window. The closer we get the thing to the window, the more of that lovely, diffused, soft light we're going to get. But sometimes maybe the windows at your front of your house have more light in the morning and the windows at your back of the house have more light in the afternoon. So I'd like you need to learn to appreciate that. And if then you make a decision, oh, I'm taking a picture of this thing and it's the morning, I'm going to put it in the windows of my front of my house rather than in the back of my house. Start to appreciate where light is coming from. It's really important. This is really nice job, Carol. Excellent execution and a really good decision to turn this black and white. And again, like there's a ton of different ways that I could slice and dice this. Like if I wanted to, I could just take a little portion of it. Maybe that's not quite so interesting because there's a bit too much black going on there. But I'm not saying that's better, but just giving you some ideas. So really nice job. Well done. Let's look at this one. This one's really interesting. Good, almost panoramic in nature. This one, remember the photographer, I think this is, if you don't mind me calling you out, I think this is Leslie's. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what Leslie has achieved here very successfully, and you see this a lot of you live near beaches. When you go to the coast, when you go to the beach, we have these strong horizontal lines. And what I like is that Leslie's found this building that kind of continues these strong horizontal lines through the frame, which helps provide depth. Does everyone remember? I'm not going to show him to you now because I showed him to you in the. Everyone remember this artist that I keep on talking about called Gursky? Remember that River Rhine picture that I said used to be the world's most expensive photograph? The ingredients in that photograph are very similar to Leslie's picture here. Leslie, maybe you could sell this picture for $5.6 million, like Andreas Gursky. But the key is that he's got these strong, and he uses these lines, and Leslie has also nicely identified, and well done for cropping out like a lot of the stuff that was extra, that was superfluous, that we didn't need. I think, again, Leslie, just to give you some ideas of how you could have done this a little bit differently or what else you could have done. Obviously, the mural is so interesting on this building. The straight on angle has definitely created this layering, but I would have been also interested. And again, it's hard because I don't know what's here and I don't know what's here. But I would have been interested if you could walk up a bit closer to the building and shoot like down along the line of this mural. Maybe you could have zoomed in. It looks like there's an interesting balcony here or something. And just had like just this bit here would have been interesting. So lots of different things that you could have done. But one thing I will say, just be careful, Leslie, when you crop your pictures, that if you crop them, as you've done here as a panoramic, if ever you wanted to enter this into, for example, like a GCA show, sometimes they'll be not always, but sometimes they'll be very specific on what's called the aspect ratio. And the aspect ratio, just to define it for everyone, means how long is the long side compared to the short side. By default, unless we change it, what comes out of every camera and every iPhone is a 3:2. That means that the long side is 3 and the short side is 2. That's why the most popular size to print photographs by a is people do 6:4s because it's the same aspect ratio. It's just times 2 times 2. GCA and other contests, and even if you just go to CVS and want to print this picture, they will often have pre-sized aspect ratios. The 3 most common are 6:4, 5:7, and 8:10. There's another one if we keep on going bigger, which is 11:14. If Leslie was to go to CVS and print this, what's going to happen is it's going to get chopped off. She's going to lose bits without realizing. And this happens a lot when people go and take pictures of families and groups, and then they go to pick them up from Costco or CVS or wherever they want to pick, and half the people are chopped off, or their heads are slightly chopped off. So I don't mind you cropping like this, which is what we call an unconstrained crop, but I just want you to be wary that if you were to go to print this, or if you were to go to enter this into a show, that you may have to recrop it. And you can get there. It's very simple. You're just going to go to your picture. You're going to go to crop like we always do. And then you'll see that when you crop, what should happen is, I'll see if I can get this up for everyone. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to turn because I think this is really important. Actually, I want to share this with everyone. Let me just stop sharing my screen for a second. Okay, you can all see me. I need to even make myself big. Can you see me big, or am I tiny here? I'm probably tiny. Let's make it so we can see us all bigger. Okay, hopefully you can now all see me big, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to turn my Zoom background off just for a second. Okay, now when you come to your photos, and I'll just find a photo here. When you come to a photo, and here's a photo of San Francisco, okay, and you go edit, so you go to the little 3 bars down at the bottom. Okay, so I click on that. Okay, and then when I go to edit, I've got the option at the bottom of crop. You can all see that. And I hit on crop. And then if I wanted to, I can crop this picture and I can go like any style that I want. Like I can make it skinny like a panoramic, or I could make it wide like a thing. But this I'm not keeping to an aspect ratio. So what I want you to look out for is when you're in the crop, there is a little button at the top here. Let me make sure I'm pointing to the right one. There's a little button at the top there that looks like a number of different squares. It's where my finger is there, the third one along on the left-hand side. If I click on that, down at the bottom here, I have some words. And you can see at the moment it says freeform, which basically just means I can do what I want. Ideally, I want you to crop with this on original. What that means is when I then do the crop, everything is going to stay. See how it's staying in proportion? So it's going to keep it as my 3:2. And then you can actually at the bottom here, you can change it. There's a square. And then if you scroll along, you actually have all your sizes. Oops, sorry, crop. And then squares at the top. And then down here at the bottom, sorry, I'm trying to do this backwards. But you can see that if I go over here, here's all my sizes. See them all there? So if I want this to be a 5:7, I click on 5:7. And then when I crop this, this is going to keep it always where the long edge is 7, the short edge is 5. I would encourage you to do this before you go to the printer. If you've got an 8:10 frame and you know you want to put this lovely picture you took in an 8:10, crop it as an 8:10 and then go to the printer, because the printer doesn't care, and the printer will cut people's heads off, cut the side of the flower off, and you've spent a lot of time and effort making it look good, and I don't want you to go and pick it up and then be disappointed by how the print looks. And I see that happen a lot by people cropping without, the technical word for it is constraining the crop ratio, keeping it as it was, or changing it to a different one. But when we're in that free form, it's a free for all. You're kind of in the wild west of aspect ratios, which generally we want to avoid doing. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Good. Okay, so let me reshare my screen with you. I can put you all back in my little classroom here. Here we go. And then, oh, Anne, do you have a question while I'm sharing the screen?
I'm struggling with aspect ratio problems, but I'll just ask one quick question here. When I scroll from original to the right, none of the ratios cited are the usual things. They're 16 by 9, 5 by 4, 7 by 5, 4 by 3, 5. I don't know how that relates to what I've actually taken.
Good question. So the main ones, so the iPhone's giving, those are all different aspect ratios.
Yeah.
When you take it, are taking it as a 2 by 3, which is the last one on that list. But you don't actually have to go there. You just have to go to original on the far left-hand side.
You
Now
don't
the
have to
iPhone,
choose a ratio.
you don't have to choose an if you're just cropping, you do not have to use a ratio every time. You just have to make sure it's on original.
Thank you.
And what I want to try to avoid you being on is this freeform one.
All right, good.
which
Thank
is
you.
where like if we took a tape measure out to Leslie's here, and we tried to see what the aspect ratio was, it could be like 7.2 by 2.3 or something really random that ideally we wouldn't want to take that to print. But nice job, Leslie. Really nice.
I will say I do a lot of my own printing. So
Okay.
I can fiddle with freeform.
So you can fiddle with that. Good. But yeah, that's a good point. If you do your own printing, then it's not such an issue. But I see it as a huge issue when people go to Costco and they want to have their prints things and then things get chopped off.
Yes.
And also when it comes to GCA, I know sometimes they do define, they say, I want it at this, they usually say we want the perimeter to be a certain size. But occasionally I have seen shows say we want an 8 by 10, we want an 11 by 14, like because they know they're hanging it in a certain way and they need everything a pretty uniform size to make sure that the show's going to look good. So just something I wanted to point out for the benefit of the group.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Let's look at this one. This one's really interesting. This is kind of like what I was encouraging Meredith to do on her sunflower picture, which is to get above it and look down. Really interesting plant material that look like some type of like succulents. I love the pink like over here on the right. It's really interesting. One thing I probably would have done on this one is I would have seen if I could get the focus on these ones on the bottom left, because it looks a little bit like we've made a mistake in that these are out of focus. And the reason they're out of focus is because they're sticking up at the camera. They're closer to the camera. So we could have held our square there and got those in focus. But general composition, even how this is leading in, very nice job on whoever took this of filling the frame. We don't need to see the sides of all the flowers. It's not important. And really creating this kind of beautiful montage and mosaic of different patterns and lines and shape and color to create something really interesting. Now, again, tons of different ways you could do this. Like you could have said, oh yeah, I really like, I don't know, this guy on this guy. Now I've got it in freeform. Hold on, let me put it to the original. I really like just this guy on the left. Like it's going to be blurry because I'm zoomed in, but like that's a really interesting picture. I really like the spikes here and maybe this is, and maybe I start thinking about tilting my camera. Imagine those pink things were in focus. There's lots of, it almost looks like fingers now sticking out. But nice job, whoever took this. Feel free, again, call out your name. Who was it? Sorry?
Meredith.
Oh, it's Meredith again. Good. So Meredith, you did exactly what I wanted you to do with the sunflower one. You changed your perspective. Nice job. Really good.
Thanks.
Let's look at
Can
this
I ask
one.
you something? This
Yeah.
is Yvonne. On that last photo, this one, if she had taken it in raw,
Yeah.
she'd be able to, like, would have been easier to get in.
Rule of thumb generally is if you take it in raw, it is easier to do anything with it afterwards.
Okay.
Because a raw file is about 4 times bigger than a JPEG.
And would
So-
that have been more, she could go in on it and it wouldn't have lost any.
Exactly. You got it. Because if you imagine a JPEG is like a tiny picture like this, and then we crop in on it, and we've only got this little small picture. If we start off with a picture that's much bigger to begin with, and then we crop on in it, we've got a much bigger canvas to work with. That's a very basic but like explanation, but JPEG to RAW essentially means times 4. Makes it 4 times bigger.
Thanks.
So as I've said to this group before, if ever you take pictures and you're in a beautiful scenic place, you'll go on vacation, you're like, I'm wandering around London and I want to take some pictures, please, if you can, remember to photograph them in RAW because it just means you can do a lot more with them afterwards. Look at this one. This one's lovely. It's very, I'm actually going to take these settings off for a second. It's very delicate. There's a very good use of black and white.
Adam,
Yeah, go for it.
it's Meredith. I took that, but I didn't like it because, well, I like it, but it's not very clear, and I couldn't figure out how to make the black more black and the white more white in the.
Well, hopefully we've covered a little bit of that today.
Yeah, well,
We
yeah.
talked about the sliders to
So
bring
that
some
would help if
going.
I did some of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I think with this one on a composition, then I would probably take out this black hole at the top.
Yeah.
I don't think that's needed because that was drawing our attention in. I want to be sucked much more into just the insect and the flower without having that hole, which I think is drawing my eye in a little bit too much. So yeah, I think Meredith, some of the things we've covered so far today would really help with that one. Look at this one for reflections. Beautiful. All about this one's all about time of day. Like taking it at this lovely, it's either late in the afternoon, just it's either sunset or sunrise, I'm not sure. But well positioned, very nice use of composition. Look where the bridge ends. It's right on like close to that nodal point as it comes up. Also, nice job, as I said, a really good thing that I want you to do when you're thinking about reflections is reflections are the subject here. The bridge is the subject, but the real interest is in the water. And really nice job on filling the frame up 2/3 with the reflection and leaving the 1/3 with the bridge. Who took this one? This one's very nice.
Cookie.
Cookie, nice job, Cookie. Really good. So, what Cookie? Did you take this in the early morning or just?
Yeah, early morning. I walk in the dark, and when I come back to the east side, the sun is rising.
Yeah, so beautiful. So we've got this lovely, and usually what happens, it's same with sunrise, but sunset. A lot of people find sunsets more accessible because they don't like getting up in the morning. But wait for the sun to go down, and then this happens. A lot of people, the sun goes down and then they leave. Usually the best colors come out 15 to 20 minutes after the sun comes out. So really nice job, Cookie. This is very well executed. And you took this on a tripod, I think. Correct me if
Nope.
or you rested it on a wall. Did you rest your camera
On a rail.
a rail? Yeah. So Cookie's rested it on a rail here because the shutter speed has slowed down where she couldn't have taken it handheld. It's a quarter of a second. And also that slower shutter speed brings some stillness and calmness to this water, to the reflections. Makes it look softer, kind of blends it all together because we're seeing a longer period of time. Now, Cookie could go back here with a tripod on her camera and she could try a really long exposure. Cookie, you could try a 10-second, 15-second, 20-second exposure. That's maybe something to try. The water is going to then look totally like mist. It's going to look like really soft mist, and especially with this like ethereal purple light, I think that would work really well. But really nice job on the theme of reflections. I can see some people are taking pictures of that, so I'll just hold on. Let's jump to the next one. Okay. Now, let's ask someone who hasn't spoken yet today. Let's ask Carrie. So, Carrie, where does your eye go in this picture?
Mine goes right to the sunflower, but it kind of bounces back to the reflection of the sunflower too.
Yeah. So I agree. I think in this picture, I can appreciate what whoever's taking it is trying to do is to get the sunflower and the reflection of the sunflower. But I think we probably just got a little bit too much negative space up there at the top that we probably don't need. That's still telling the story. In fact, we could probably even take out the vase and you could be more abstract and be more like that. And that straight away is becoming much more interesting. It probably, I would have encouraged whoever took this to go a little bit lower. If you would have gone a little bit lower, you actually would have removed the frame of the mirror. So then it would have been really abstract because you would have been able to see the reflection, but not quite figure out where it was coming from. But I think now this crop compared to the previous crop that we just looked at, if I compare the two, then hopefully, unlike what happened to Carrie's eye and my eye, is that your eye gets sucked much more on the one in on the right to the sunflower and the reflection. Then on the one on the left, I feel like I kind of go back into this interesting room and I see the chair and the light and the garden behind and the interesting like texture on the wall, and I lose the focal point, which is the sunflower.
Mm-hmm.
So, and hopefully it makes sense to everyone. If the photographer would have just dropped a little bit lower, so almost shooting a little bit up into the sunflower, then you would have got the sunflower and the reflection and none of this frame behind. You would have taken that out of play. Nice job. Really nice, interesting. This is very Vivian Maya, one of the artists that I showed you before, in terms of its composition. Oops. Let's go here. This one's really interesting. Changing perspective. I see a face in this one. I see, especially if I spin it around like this way, it almost looks like my dog's, it looks like here's two eyes and here's the snout. Who took this? I think it's shells on a beach, or rocks on a beach, but correct me if I'm wrong if you're here who took it. Um, but really nice job again of filling the frame, not showing me the whole thing. This is a really good example of where we are close up on a subject and we would want to hold the focus. So we'd want to make a decision with the tapping that we practiced before. And I'd say, I want focus to be here, or I want focus to be here. Usually we put the focus near on something that's nearer the camera than further away, because then what happens is you have the sharp thing and then the focus falls off and falls off and falls off, which is kind of happening here. I would probably say the focus on this one, the sharpest bit is in here, not on the front, the pink part. I'd probably want it on the pink part, just because of the way that the flow of the picture is. But actually, there's even an S curve in this picture that takes us to the back. So nice job whoever did this, and well done on filling the frame. Look at this one. I think this is probably reflection. Very interesting. It's kind of interesting because the architecture of the building, the blue really plays off against kind of the blues in the sky. Now, whoever worked on this one, I think you've slightly over edited it. And the reason I say you've over edited it, if you look over here in this section here, you can start to see that the sky has gone a bit of a weird color. And over here, and over here, and it's almost gone a little bit green over there. That's a sign for me that we've tried to squeeze the lemon a little bit too hard. And once we've squeezed it and squeezed it and squeezed it, and then we try to eke out a little bit more. And the problem is, once you go past a threshold, you start causing damage to your photograph, especially if you photographed it as a JPEG. Not such an issue as a RAW. So I appreciate what's been done here. I think the edit is good, but just I would ask for it to be held back just a little bit. Even I think the shadows have been lifted in here a little bit and brightened. And you can see that under the pier has just gone a little bit, almost looks a little bit green. Hopefully everyone can see that. Can you see that in there? And if I zoom in a lot, you'll really see the over edit. See there how it's gonna started to go a bit like pixely. But generally, really nice job whoever took this. One really moot point, but I think important. Again, watch out for your edges of your frame. That lamppost doesn't need to be there. So I'd crop that out. I'd also probably on this one, just an idea of what you could have done, is I would have, if I could have done, I would have crouched a little bit lower. And what that would have done is that would have really emphasized the reflection of the building in the beach. And at the moment, we're kind of getting it, but we're not getting it as much as I'd like to get it. So I would have crouched down, been patient, let the waves come out. And as they go return back to the ocean, I would have taken my picture and you would have got this whole Joe's reflected in the beach. This would also be an interesting thing to do, like at kind of the time that Cookie took her bridge picture, early in the morning or like after sunset, because hopefully what you'd see then is you'd see the lights of the building lit up. You'd see those reflections here juxtaposed against like that blue hour sky that we've talked about. Just some other ideas. So if this is, whoever took this, if this is local to you, I would definitely encourage you to go back and try to go back at sunset. Go back at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And you'll see the difference in the reflections, and crouch down a little bit. But yeah, very interesting composition. Now I know these are carries, and I've purposely put them all next to each other as Carrie asked me some questions about these. So Carrie experimented with this chair. Okay, and this is a really good, I wanted to show you actually the class all of these because it's an interesting exercise in two things. One is perspective. Look how different the chair looks in all of these pictures, especially between like this one, this one, this one, and this one. It looks totally different just by moving around it. You can see when Carrie went lower, the chair looked huge. When she went higher, it looked smaller, especially over here. Look at this one. She's pulled back further away. Now, the other interesting thing, which well done, Carrie, for observing this, is Carrie's observed over time how light has changed how this chair looks. So not only has it, like in this one, it's not lit up at all. It's just time of day. In this one, it's beautifully lit up, creating that shadow against. The closer usually that we have an object to the wall, the more shadow it creates. If Carrie had pulled this chair away, it wouldn't have created a definitive shadow. And also, what's Carrie? This one, the golden one, was this in early in the morning or late in the afternoon?
So all of these were actually early in the morning, and I just noticed it going to wake my daughter up. And I loved the light on the one you have circled, and I wanted to do a better composition. I took that one first,
Mm-hmm.
and I could never get the other ones to look the light. It only looked that way when I was standing further back.
Yeah, and that's a good exercise in how, I mean, you could probably crop this one in terms of thinking about a better composition, but it's a good exercise or good in terms of understanding. Even if you're cropping it, you probably don't even need the whole chair. You could probably just like, this is an interesting picture
I like that.
in terms of light. But that's interesting, Carrie's point that she only had this golden light for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, if that. By the time she came back to the chair, it had gone and it had moved. And that's a case where we really want to use light and play it to our advantage. And that's what I kind of, when I was alluding earlier, when I said you'll quickly learn around your house where the good light is and what time that happens. Like my house has great lighting at the back of it in the afternoon. But if I took something to the front of the house in the afternoon, the lighting's not as strong. It's just the way my house is orientated in relation to the sun. And each of you are going to have that. And it's fun to play. And especially when you have an object like this that's sitting in the same place, go and photograph it throughout the day and look how different it looks as the day progresses. But nice job, nice job, Carrie. Try this with this like slightly tighter crop like this. I think this is also interesting. I don't need to see the whole stool. One thing I would say, Carrie, is this is around the house. I don't know if you intended this for reflections. I don't think you did. But just for everyone's benefit, this is not a reflection. This is a shadow. I've seen this sometimes confused by people when they say, oh, this is a reflection. This would not be considered a reflection. Good. Okay, look at this one. This one's really interesting. Lovely up close shot, not including everything of this. I think it's a tool being sharpened, or it looks almost like, I don't know what it is, a knife being, I don't know, whoever took it can maybe enlighten me. But Cookie, what is it, Cookie?
My husband used to be a dentist and now he's a wood turner. It's the same, I think it's the same set of skills.
Yeah. My everyone in my family is a dentist, so I get that background. But yeah, so the kind of polishing this piece of wood or this dental tool or whatever it is, I love the shards flying off it. It's a good choice to put it black and white. One thing you could have done, Cookie, kind of hard because I know you were inside, but you could have attempted to push your shutter speed up a little bit more. And I would have been okay with you taking, especially with your camera, taking your ISO to maybe 2000 just to try this and see how all these shards and things look like if you were more at a shutter speed of like closer to 1000. You're going to see, like, you can see here's the movement in like your husband's finger. Like, I love the sharpness here, but you can see that it would have been interesting to see all these shards coming off it really crystallized, but a very good composition and a very good choice for black and white. Because again, kind of like the original photograph we looked at the tents, this is a very good storytelling picture. You look at it and it tells a story. Like the thumb is so sharp, the shards coming off. You look at it and it sparks interest, which is great. Nice job, Cookie. Let's look at this one. Photographing teenagers or little kids, sometimes notoriously difficult. Um, so definitely around the house, definitely capturing this little boy, um, who what's he do? Oh, he's looking at his phone. I would have been very interested. I think I don't mind that his elbow is cut off here, but I do feel like his head is a little bit too far off to the right because I think that my attention goes mainly to that bright leg in the middle. So I probably would have just shifted my camera over just a tad on this one to the right, as in myself rotated clockwise, which would have moved the boy's head slightly more into the frame. Another thing you could have done, the person who was taking this, given that he was watching his phone and he was probably still for a minute or two, is I would have gone and stood right at his feet and looked up at him. Especially with this very interesting chair and the shape of the chair, you would have got an interesting perspective of the boy looking relatively large and imposing and creating an interesting perspective of him. And the chair and the lines here, there's an artist you can all go and look up that it's called Platon. If you just Google him, maybe I'll show him to you another day. But he does this the whole time, where he'll go low to the subject, front on, to create a more engaging portrait. But nice capture and definitely around the house. Oops, this one's super zoomed in. Look at this one. Really good filling the frame. Nice job, whoever did this one. This one I think would work this way. It also works if we rotate it. It almost looks like you took a picture of some farmland and a road out of an aeroplane. But the texture and the line. Now, this one would be a perfect example of where I'd want you to use that black point on the iPhone just to create a little bit more richness in the black and white. It would have kind of taken it from that to that. That's before, that's after. Just seeing a little bit more dynamic range. More of the dark blacks, more of the bright whites, more of the shades of gray in between. But really nice capture, and well done for filling the frame. Look at this one. Definite reflections going on here. I appreciate the framing of the bush at the front to frame the birds. I probably on this one would have thought, I'm photographing this one. I probably would have isolated one of the birds because I think they're a little bit too far apart. So I probably would have said, okay, I'm going to go in on this guy and probably crop out that little bright bit on the outside. Now I know it's a tiny bit blurry here, so I'll make it a bit smaller. But I think that feels more balanced than trying to include, which is always the tempting thing to do, is to include both of them. But here I feel they're competing a little bit with each other. I actually feel like my eye primarily wants to go to the one on the left because the reflection of the water that it's in is a little bit brighter. Remember, good photography is about distilling the complexity of the world around us. It's what do we take out of our pictures rather than what do we include that usually makes for a more powerful photograph. And here is a perfect example where I think the temptation is there's two birds, I've got to capture both. But I think potentially a stronger capture would be just to focus on one. Let's look at this one. Lovely reflection picture. Good storytelling image. Only thing I would say about this one that I think could be improved is I would like this person to be over here. I'd like them to be over here. Because what I feel like I'm doing here is I know like I'm kind of following this and I'm going like this. And it almost feels like I'm losing all that beach the other way. And this again is just you moving as the photographer. The photographer's got to move one step to their right. That's it. One step to their right would have moved this lady off to the left. And then I feel like it would have been, because can you see it? I would have kind of wanted her reflection here and here and the reflection of the dog. I can kind of recreate it. I can kind of crop it if I can get to the crop. I can kind of crop it, so, but I'm going to lose some of the reflections in doing so. But I would have wanted her more on that side of the frame. And you've got a question.
Well, I agree with you. I think at the time I took the picture, I was just as interested as catching the shadow as the reflection. But I think another thing that would have helped would be if her hat and her head were just above instead of kissing the horizon.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. Now, you almost took the words out my mouth. The way you could have done that without asking her to move is you could have just dropped a tiny bit lower. And if you would have
Uh-huh.
just dropped a tiny bit lower, her head would be in the sky, not kissing the horizon. It also would have helped to emphasize the reflections. Again, I know a lot of you are fortunate enough to live near a beach. If you're at the beach and you want to get reflections in the beach, in the water, go low. Remember that trick I taught you about? You can turn your iPhone upside down. If you don't want to crouch down, I'm not expecting you to lie on your belly on the beach. But even just turning your phone is going to get you that extra 6, 8 inches lower, and that makes an enormous difference in how the reflections look. So remember to practice that. But nice job, Anne. Very good capture. A good storytelling picture as well. Look at this one. Filling I have to say, amongst everyone, just generally as a group, and this is to everyone here on the recording today, but also people listening afterwards, the improvement from, I went back and I looked at class like 1 compared to class 4. Most of you, I can see, in fact, all of you are beginning to fill the frame more, use more light. The temptation, and we saw loads of pictures in class 1 where people took pictures like this and they showed the whole tree and they showed some of the leaves in the background and some of the other stuff. This is so much more interesting. I like this little knot here. I'm kind of drawn up here to this little line. Trees, close up of trees, again, for those of you who like seeing faces and animal faces and things, barks of trees always yield interesting patterns and shapes. And when you go back and look at them, you'll often see things that you didn't first appreciate. But this is a very strong black and white, good use of dynamic range and a good use of filling the frame. So this one I really like. Well done, whoever took this. This one, well done. This one, now this one looked a tiny bit, and this may be just me looking at it, but this one we got lower. So this one, whoever took it, got a little bit lower, and this has a lovely, lovely sweep through it. Here's who can remember? I'll give a brownie point to, who can remember what this type of line is called? That's like a triangle.
This
leading line? No,
it's a type of leading line.
Vanishing point.
Good.
focal point.
Well done. So remember, if it's a triangle and we turn it upside down, it's a vanishing point. So you've got a strong, and you see, especially at the beach, you see those everywhere. So here's our vanishing point, taking us to the back of the beach. On top of it, the line of the water is creating an S curve. So this is really good because we've got 2 types of leading line taking us to the back of the picture. I love the inclusion of the people here. I think that provides a sense of scale and how vast this beach is. Without that, we don't really have that contextual reference point. And obviously the reflection of the clouds, well done again for 2/3, 1/3. The temptation is all the clouds are so interesting. I want to show more clouds, but we don't need it here. This is an excellent, excellent reflections picture, and a really sweet, again, very interesting time of day. Go back if it had been like this kind of big stormy sky and you went back at cookies time or at sunset and take the same picture, then you're going to have all the colors reflected in the water. But this is an excellent capture. So whose was this? And really nice. Well done. Very, very good.
Thank you. It's so old.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's the fact is that the beauty of technology now is we can go back and we can really play and rest. I mean, you can see like I'm being really quick here, but you can rescue and not even rescue, but you can enhance old pictures.
Yeah.
With much greater ease, especially when we start using Lightroom, which again we're not touching on today. Look at this one. This one's a great reflections picture. I love the blur in the background. Love the fact that we really can't really tell what we're looking at. in terms of what's causing this reflection. This is very along those lines of that lady Vivian Meyer, who I showed you as inspiration last time. Looking into storefronts, looking into there's a really easy picture every one of you can do. If you go and stand next to your car and you photograph into the wing mirror and you just show the wing mirror, you're straight away going to create something really abstract and interesting because you're gonna distort the reality of what we usually see. And this is kind of doing the same. I think maybe do we need the whole thing? Or could we have taken a little bit of it off? But it's a fascinating picture. Um, who took this?
Nancy.
Nancy. What is it? I can't even tell what the reflection's being
It's
caused by.
it's a magnifying mirror in front of a window, and I don't know how I got it, but you can see the windowsill is at the top because it's turned upside down. It's a tree outside my
Yeah,
window.
very nice. Good. Well, excellent capture. And
I
and
just
and
I
you,
just
you
saw
say
that I had taken it and sent it to you.
well,
Yeah,
good. Well, you say you don't know how you got it, but you took it. That's the most
I,
important thing. So you
yeah,
did at the time. The most important thing is you saw this.
I saw it.
You did see it and you captured it. So really nice job and love this. Remember the word bokeh. This is Nancy's. Well, she's put the focus through here because the tempting thing is sometimes the focus, like if we left it on auto, like we were talking about before, the tree could have been blurry and this black border could have been sharp, which would have been wrong. So really good capture and a very good example of a reflections picture. Let's look at this one. It's a really interesting black and white. Lovely use of a snake charmer in, I'm going to guess, in Morocco?
No, India.
India. That was my second guess. I thought it was one or the other. So lovely use of, again, composition in terms of where we've put him. Very interesting use of black and white. I would be very interested, Anne, for you to revisit this and try playing with the black point a little bit in the exposure, because I think you could really bring out some dynamic range in this picture to make it, again, I'll just kind of recreate it kind of very quickly. And don't worry what I'm doing too much here, but it's kind of the same.
I actually did fiddle around with the black and white. I maybe got it too dark
Yeah, well, look at the
in
difference.
his trout.
There's yours.
In his,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's mine.
I like it much better what you did.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing
But
is that
I
is I'm
went
just
too
seeing what
far.
I don't think you went too far. I just think you were playing maybe with the wrong sliders.
Oh,
So
Which
so
slider did you use, Adam?
well,
I
I think I first did what we discussed earlier, which is to drain all the color
yeah,
and then fiddle with the black and white slider. But I think I went too far because I think it's very important to see that knee for the
absolutely.
definition of the space,
And ultimately, the most important thing is this.
the
That's
face.
what we care about the most. Now, Nancy, you asked which sliders I use. So I use some sliders that you don't have access to on your iPhone, but essentially I use the black and the white.
Mhm.
Then once I'd done that, I adjusted the exposure, which is on
Mhm.
your iPhones, just to brighten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think Anne's one originally, just the edit was a little bit dark. You can see
Yeah.
how he almost looks like he's behind like a screen of like fog, like just a little bit. And we want to make him look more three-dimensional.
Well, whatever else you did, you also made the snake in next to his knee much more prominent. It fades into the folds of his garment
Yeah.
the other way, and you can sort of get the point of everything
And
better.
essentially, I have not sharpened this picture. I have not like made the snake more prominent. All I did was increase the dynamic range. I just made it so we can see more light. And the byproduct of that is lots of things, is we get drawn into the man's face, is we see the lovely light hitting this snake. Like you see this snake and the texture on his head, like, but really good. The most important thing, Anne, is the bones of this picture. And you captured it really well by putting the man where you wanted to put him, getting down to his level. So we're looking into his eyes. It's a really strong, good storytelling picture. So well done. Let's look at this one around the house. This one's great. Very good use of like using available light. Very nice symmetry. Sharpness. I know this one's taken on a camera, but you can do this on your phone. This is what I was talking about when I want you to put the square in the middle. that should be a yellow square, not a red square, but put the square in the middle because sometimes focus falls on the petals. I like the very clean background here. Very important when we photograph people, pets, flowers, food, anything that I would put under the umbrella of things.
Can you talk about how you did that background? Whoever took that?
Yeah, go for it. This is Cookie, right?
It's my white wall,
Just the white wall.
but the light is coming from behind me.
Yeah.
It's the time of day. I have white walls. I live in Florida. My house is white.
It just almost looks surreal. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I felt like it was after I took it, I struggle with detail photos like this. So I challenged myself and I feel like must have been too close to the wall when I looked at it, that there was no shadow. It's completely high key and there's just no definition of it. I don't know.
So are
I
you
think I
saying
should have
Cookie
pulled
you
it away
want
from the
you
wall a
saying
little bit more.
Cookie you wanted some shadowing behind it?
I don't know. It looked too flat to me. It was probably 12 to 16 inches away from the wall.
Mhm.
Um, but I should
So,
have
so,
tried
so if you would
further.
have wanted more shadowing, Cookie, you would have put it closer to the wall, not further
Yes,
away.
okay, closer to the wall.
So,
Yes.
so, so, so if you would have, if
No,
it was 12 inches away and you put it 4 inches away, you would see
right.
shadowing. Now that would have
Right,
created a very different photo. I
right.
think Carrie's point here, and I agree, is that it looks so like bold and stark, and like the light looks like it looks very ethereal. This really like, and it helps that you have white walls that bounce the light around. If you have a darker wall, it absorbs the light. A white wall bounces the light. But yes, I think you could have taken this picture like this, Cookie, and then I would have just moved it, and then I would have taken another one and seen which
Right.
one you preferred. But this, and again, also not necessary the whole time, Cookie. You've got your macro lens here. You do not need to show the whole flower if you don't want to. So I want you to also push yourself and challenge yourself of like experimenting with the fact that
Ooh.
sometimes we can go really detailed with that lens and create something equally as it. This almost looks like a praying mantis's head coming out the flower. We're seeing lots of animal heads today.
I actually took that photo, but I had so much pollen sitting on the white leaves, I didn't like it.
Okay, yeah. So nice job, really nice job, Cookie.
Thanks.
Let's look at this one. So I think this one was Jean's. I think Jean hopefully is still here. So very interesting in terms of, I think it's a mushroom, a very interesting mushroom. Um, Again, do we need to see the space around the mushroom? I'm not sure. I think again, I probably would have cropped in a little because you've got all these swirls and shapes, even maybe tilted the camera a little bit when I took this picture. And straight away, then and in fact, I'd probably even get rid of that little bit on the top left-hand corner, and I'd come in more like this. Now, if we turn this black and white, again, I'm going to recreate what you could do on your phone, but look how suddenly we can create something where, and again, don't worry about what I'm doing but we can create something where we've got a lot of what we call luminosity, and we've created something because the lighting was really good in this picture, G. You have the lighting. And I think here now we've got something that's very interesting that you can't really tell what it is. Maybe I don't like the dark spot in the middle, so maybe I would move over and I'd be like, actually, I don't want that dark spot and I want to focus more like over here. I mean, there's tons of ways and create more of a swirl or a curl. But the subject matter here was very interesting and well done for capturing it so well. Um, but yeah, don't be afraid to, you can remember you've got your zoom on your camera. You don't even have to, if you don't want to get close, you can use the zoom. We practiced that in one of the first classes, all the different lenses. You could very easily zoom in to get a picture like this. So nice job. Let's look at this one. Really? So this one, my critique of this one would be that the reflection is cut off as a reflection picture. So I would rather this picture had some of the tree cut off and I could see the whole reflection than the other way around. If I'm purely thinking of it as because I think my eye goes up here and I actually want it to go down here. a beautiful picture. It's like mist coming over the swamp, and if it but I would have been very tempted to try to avoid. Look where the horizon is in the picture. It's right through the middle. And I think we could have shifted that horizon up to create more interest with the texture. And you can clearly see like the line of the shore here reflected. There's a lot to play with here in terms of reflections. Nice choice to put it black and white because you have that kind of mystical magic of the fog rolling over. My really main critique is I would have liked to see a little bit more space down there. Look at this one. This one's a great exemplification in perspective. Looking up. We miss things the whole time by walking around blinkered. Very symmetrical photograph. Would look good in black and white, this one, because it's got strong blacks and interesting whites. Maybe even better in black and white because you really notice the strong lighting. But whoever took this again, probably just a little bit too much negative space. Like we don't need all of that at the top and at the bottom. This is very symmetrical. And it looks better. Even going in on just a portion of it, almost looks like a spider's web. And going in on a portion of it creates something. And then you start to see a bit more of the detail of the light fixture. But very, very nice. Most important thing, well done, whoever took this, for looking up. Look at this one. Total opposite, getting low down to something. Now, this one to me looks, again, it may just be how it's been sent to me. So again, please, please, please remember to send things to me on the original size. Don't send me the small, the medium, or the large when it prompts you. This may be just because it's been sent to me small, but it looks a tad over-edited. Just a tad. It's moving more from it, and you can see the degradation and starting to form like in these like petals or leaves. That's a sign of that we've squeezed the lemon too hard. Okay. It's a really interesting picture. And I love the composition and I love the flow from left to right. We've got a beautiful sweeping curve coming through here, which really helps to add dimension. But just watch out for that over editing portion of it. Let's look at this one. This one's really good. Very simple, but effective. I probably would have cropped out that little bit at the bottom. And well, there's tons of things you could have done with this. This one's so interesting because of the line of the lamp. We could have just made it like this. We could have offset it. We could have turned it upside down. And just to give you some ideas, we could have flipped it this way or even gone this way, which would have looked really bizarre, but create something that's more of a talking point. This one would have also looked good in black and white because it's got very stark, interesting composition and line. So nice job. Let's look at this one. Very nice use of sun reflections. The thing I don't like here is the cutting off of the people at the waist. General rule of thumb, whenever you're photographing people, is never cut them off at the wrists, the ankles, or the waist. Because if you cut them off at the wrists, it looks like they've got no hands. You cut them off at the ankles, it looks like they've got no feet. And if you cut them off at the waist, it looks like they've got no legs. So usually I'd want to see, I don't have to see all the way down to their feet, but I'd want to see just a little bit more that we usually, in fact, I'll draw a little diagram for you here. This will help everyone. So generally in photography, we have 4 different crops when we photograph a person. One is a full length crop, where you see everything. The second one, which I probably would have gone for here, is a 3/4 crop, which is where you see like just above the knee, like you crop it just like above the knee on someone's thigh. That's called a 3/4 crop. The next one, and there's no perfect thing, but I'm just giving the standard ones. The next one is where you crop someone just below like the breastbone, like below the rib cage. And the final one is like if you were taking someone's headshot and you're more like that. And those are the 4 most common crops when we photograph people. But a big no-no is we don't cut people off at the waists. This is a great picture. Beautiful picture. I wish there was, again, on this one, a little bit more separation between the people and the reflection. So it would have been lovely if the people were here. Again, we could have achieved that by just moving to our left. But lovely capture in terms of time of day. Look at this one for a storytelling picture. Beautiful. Lovely perspective, big clouds. Maybe the blacks are a little bit too black, but they're okay. But very good, again, composition and flow. And I love the looking up and the storytelling picture we get from this person cleaning a chimney or looking down a chimney or fixing an area of a roof. Creates something that's very interesting, especially with that big sky behind them. Really good. I'm going to zip through relatively quickly because I want to make sure I cover everyone's pictures. So I'm going to do like almost like a fire round here. I'll try and give a quick comment on everyone so I can help you all out. This one again, horizon maybe a tad too much in the middle, just a tad. I just pull it up more. If it was a reflections picture like this, I'd even be tempted on this one just with where the line is going to go like that.
Mm-hmm.
And to take out that extra space. I don't think you need it because the line was kind of taking me to the middle of the picture. If you look at the original.
Yep.
And I want the line taking us somewhere that's like off in the distance. Or I could have actually done the opposite. Probably actually even better would be even this because the reflections are so strong there.
Yeah.
That feels more balanced. But nice capture, really nice capture. Good here, well done. This is exactly what I was talking about, honing in on one bird instead of the other. Nicely framed, excellent reflection picture. If I'm being really nitpicky with my judge's hat on, I'd be watching out for stuff like this. We can remove that afterwards. We'll get to that maybe another time. But really, really good in terms of the positioning of the bird in relation to the succulent or the plant, framing you up to that front focal point. Let's look at this one. So this one, I'm going to cut off the edges for a second. But this one, I think that we've gone too far with the black and white edit. So we've lost any of the detail. And this is where you've got to be careful. We've lost the detail in the house here, in the hut. I want to bring that back. Look at the difference straight away when I bring that back. Can't quite get it back all the way just because I don't have the JPEG. But even doing that, that's too dark. That I'm getting lost in the house. That's why you got it this black point and white point and it's playing with the exposure, especially with black and white. My best advice would be less is more. It's very tempting, easy to overdo it, which I don't want us to do. Okay, I'm going to zip, but some of these are repeats. I'm just looking what. Okay, let's go quick. So, really good. Look at this one. Excellent shot of this caterpillar. And this is where the 1, 2, 3 tap focus really shines because we can keep this guy in focus the whole time. If we just left it and we didn't tap, the iPhone could choose the plant. It could choose the background. This is we're saying to the iPhone, I want this bug to be in focus. Again, probably a little bit too much negative space on the left. I'd probably crop it a little bit more, even think about maybe tilting my camera. So the caterpillar kind of felt like he was climbing up. But really, really nice capture. Excellent. Let's look at this one.
Oh, that's great.
This one's really cool. I would argue that the back is a little bit too bright. I would probably be trying to get my square tapped on the outside just to get it a little bit better exposed, just so we can see a bit more of the detail. But as an around the house picture and just thinking abstractly about how can we use a staircase to create something very interesting, really good. Whoever staircase this is, I'll give you a try coming and standing here and peeking through this gap. There's an interesting gap there to the outside.
Yeah, the background is bright because there were a bunch of trucks out there that were not pretty.
Yeah, okay, well that makes sense. But when those trucks aren't there, it would be worth trying this one again.
Yes,
because you're creating a really interesting frame here. Look at this one. This one's incredibly abstract. I don't know what this is. I can't tell.
I have to tell you, I had the most fun. I took the camera and held it up to the windshield in the car wash.
There we go. Good.
And it was absolutely amazing what showed up. I just kept clicking.
Yeah.
And now I know if I go the next time to use the focus thing, and it might help.
100% it will help. And here you're seeing the reflection and the refraction of all that color and light in the windshield. So really nice job. I'm going to skip past this one because I feel like this is not really reflections or not really at home. But again, just watch out for the bottoms of your frame. Even trees, we don't want to cut off trees like at their neck. We want to see a little bit more. Let's have it. And if everyone doesn't mind, I'm going to run 5 minutes over. There's been a lot of questions today, and I want to make sure I just cover everyone's things. So if you need to leave, don't worry. But I'm probably just going to run till 2:20 just to make sure I get everyone's pictures covered.
Okay.
This one almost looks like a rhinoceros's skin to me. I don't know why. That's why it reminded me of that. But again, I would say again, look, watch out. What I want you to watch out for is these whites are getting too bright. So we don't want overexposed. So you've just got to keep an eye on that when you're doing your black and white conversions, so as to not blow out. By that, it means make the whites too bright. This one's great. I love the footprints. I'd probably even hone in on them even more. I'd probably crop this down. Let me just make this. So I'd probably come down just like this. But this is a really interesting storytelling picture. Got a lot of dimension, a lot of texture. Very, very good, especially the use of light. Look how the light is creating this gradiated look across the path. It's all about time of day, like what Cookie talked about before. Look at this one. This one's a great one to practice focus on. And nice job whoever took this, because you've very strongly managed to place the focus on the frog's head. I probably would have taken out some of the extra space down at the bottom. I think that's unnecessary. And pull him over to the right like that. If anything, maybe he should be pulled over to the left because he's looking that way. I just don't have enough room. But maybe the composition is better if he's looking over that way and we're giving him room to breathe. Lovely capture of a rainbow. I think the focus thing that we've learned today will help with stuff like this, where we haven't quite got the focus. But again, a really beautiful capture. Excellent use here of fill the frame. Lovely, like cornucopia. I can't even speak anymore. Lovely, like blend of color, line, shape, tone, light. Well done for going close and filling the frame. This is exactly what I've been pushing us as a class to do. So excellent. Congratulations, whoever took that one. Reflections here, really interesting, but I think there's too much going on. So I'd be like, this boy is kind of interesting. Let me go up close to it. Let me maybe go vertical this way.
Is it?
Just like that. That now straight away feels more contained and balanced than having all that extra negative space. Again, a very good story. But one thing that you can play with black and whites we haven't even got to yet is silhouettes and shadows. Carrie kind of did this with this chair. Again, like I think this photo is interesting. I'm going to do my crop where I'm going to crop the guy at the thigh. I think this photo is much more interesting if we bring it in to that. That's a real storytelling picture now. What's this guy doing? Like, where is he? What's this room? Like, that almost looks like that Rennie Burry, Men on the Rooftops. Remember I showed you that picture? Very good.
Yes.
Nice job. Again, very good use of reflections. Beautiful capture. Lovely light. Strong lines. Again, kind of like the first picture we saw, we could turn it this way if you wanted to create something interesting. But really, this is excellent. The only thing I would say is watch again. The horizon is just a little close to the center. Maybe I would have pushed it up a little bit just to create more of the reflection, but the symmetry here is very beautiful. This one I saw when I was going through them last night. It almost looked like it was just, I don't know what it is, but it looked like it was photographing through like a petri dish. It almost looked like something under a microscope. Really abstract. I don't know what it is. But the circles and the bubbles and the shape, again, I still feel like maybe as a group we're leaving a little bit. You see a lot of the things that I do are slight little crops, slight changes, but they make a big difference. Let's try it and be like this one. This one's great, filling the frame with this light fixture. This one's very strong. Excellent, whoever took this. Very, very nice job. This one I would have been interested to see as well, what it would have looked like if the light was turned on. Would have also been interesting because here the light was off. But also look how good that one looks in black and white, because you have all that gradation of light. This one, 100%, this needs some of our black and white treatment that we've practiced today. It looks a little bit flat. And I again take out some of the negative space to come into the palms a little bit more. And apologies, I'm going relatively fast here. I just want to make sure that I cover everyone's pictures. And I think, I just did it. Yes, good, 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 good. Excellent. Sorry, so sorry for running a couple of minutes over. I appreciate the extra time. Let me stop my screen share here today. Um, Good. So we lost a few people in the extra 5 minutes, but there's still a few of us left here. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I've got one.
Yeah, go for it, Nancy. And sorry, Nancy and Anne, for some reason
Okay,
you're not in our
I'm
class.
sorry, I've been in and out of the whole thing because um my internet keeps going out. Okay, the black and the white on an I-15. I can
Yeah,
find black spot. What is it called? That's not it.
black point, black point.
Black point. But what's the white? What is the white part called
The white point
to
is
lighten it?
you go to the exposure, the first one.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And
Thank you.
Anne has
Yes.
a question.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions today. You could see, and you kind of mentioned it quite a few times ago. When I'm sending you cropped pictures from my iPad,
Yeah.
where I store most of my stuff, there are sometimes black borders, and I don't understand why that's happening. Because I try to actually get rid of the black borders, and they are still there. So
Yeah, it's a very specific question that I think I'd probably have to address with you offline, but I would watch when you crop your picture. And sometimes we crop and we crop it to such an extent where the iPad or the iPhone will create a black border because we've tilted it or we've rotated it and there's nothing that can go there, so it puts in black. A lot of the time it's that the aspect ratio is not cohesive or joint with the crop that you're trying to do. So maybe and I don't know because I can't see your iPad, but maybe your iPad could have been set as a 4:3 and then you went to crop it and you actually cropped it as a 6:4 and then it leaves black borders around the outside.
is there a way I can address this with you offline?
Yeah, follow up with me by email and as I say to anyone, if anyone needs any one-on-one help, I'm always happy to give that to you. But that's a very specific question and that I think
Yes.
we need to address
Thank
online.
you.
To
Thank
that
you.
point, today is the last lesson. I know a lot of you have messaged me or asked me last time, like, can we carry on? I'm very happy to carry on. I think it would, there's so much stuff that I want to teach. Like I had a whole stuff lined up to teach you guys today that I never even got to because there were questions and we went down other creative rabbit holes to make sure that we answered everyone's questions. I would highly recommend for this group. I think it's a nice working group. I think we're all at a relatively similar level, which also helps as a group. Some groups I teach people are way advanced and some people are way like get left behind. I feel here everyone's at a good level. I would suggest and recommend another 4 classes, exactly as we've done. I think the kind of the syllabus and what we'd be doing would be very similar. Me setting you themes, me teaching you new things. It wouldn't be, I don't like teaching purposely. I don't like to say this lesson is just on black and white or this lesson is just on this very specific technique. Because I find what happens with that is people then have so many questions about it, and then I don't address everyone's questions. So it's more, as you've probably seen from my teaching style the last 4 weeks or however long you've been with me, I like to be a bit more very structured, but free form in terms of being able to answer everyone's questions and use your photos as examples. I think that's the best way to do it rather than use mine. No point me just showing you a photo, editing it, and you having no idea how to do that yourself. So I would recommend that we continue with another 4 lessons. Can I just have a show? Interesting. Can I just have a show of hands of just people who are here who would be interested in carrying on, please?
What were the dates?
Yeah,
What were the dates?
I'll have to send you the dates. I got to look at my calendar. So what I will do is I will take a look at my calendar. March, April is a great time to be doing photography because everything's like blooming. Everything's like it's spring is a good time. Spring and fall, I usually say, are the 2 best times to practice photography. But I will send everyone 4 dates that I recommend as we move into March and April. I'd really appreciate if you can just respond to my email and just say, yes, I'm interested. And if you're not interested, that's fine. And just say, no, I don't wish to continue. I usually require a minimum of 10 people to run these classes. We've got way more than that in this group. So I'm not overly concerned that we won't hit that minimum. But please, if you can just reply, when I send the recording later today, I'll say, here are my recommended dates. Again, don't worry if you can't make a date or 2 dates. Everything's recorded, everything's online. You can always email me and ask me a specific question if you have something very specific that you're struggling with. I always say, don't suffer in silence. But I think this group would really benefit from another 4 lessons to get us to like the next stage, and continue to help us all grow. Okay. So with that, I will stop the recording. I've just noticed now that there's tons of things in the chat. Oh, Yvonne wants to take. Okay, lots of people telling me all different things. Sorry, I missed the chat as I was so engrossed in everyone's great photos today. And I will.